Welcome to Motivated to Lead podcast, helping you become a better leader. I'm your host, Mark Klingstein. Hi, everyone. Thanks again for joining us for our podcast this week. My name is Mark Klingstein with SEMA Partners. If you're new to our podcast, welcome. We've had some great leaders that have joined us on our podcast over the last few years, and they share lessons learned from their careers. Our goal is to help you become a better leader. This week, we're going to be talking with Amir Abolfathi. Amir is a innovator in medical technology. He's served as a CEO of several companies. He sits on boards. He has been an innovator and also an inventor. He has over 100 patents. He's got some great lessons that he's learned in his career. I think they'll be helpful to you. Looking forward to today's conversation with Amir. It's great to have Amir joining us for our conversation, and appreciate you taking time out of your week to talk to us.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Well, we've talked over the years and different companies that you've been a part of, and would love to hear kind of just an overview of your career for those that are listening. We've got a lot of new and up and coming leaders they're listening, and it's always fun to hear people's journey from kind of when they started in their career to where they are now.
All right, I'd be happy to. So I grew up in Southern California, and I went to school there. I got my bachelor degree in biomedical engineering from UC San Diego, got my MBA from USC, and I started my career at Baxter Edwards in Irvine. And my first job was I was designing heart valves and venous valves. Okay. And then I moved up north, worked for Advanced Cardiovascular System before they turned into these giant corporation, as most people know as Guidant Corporation. Now it's part of Boston Scientific and Abbott. Joined there, and I was there only for a short stint, working on, different products, angioplasty balloon, coronary stents, a few other projects. But then my old boss at Baxter called me, moved back to Southern California again, work on another heart valve project for Pfizer. And most people don't know Pfizer at one point had a medical device division, but they divested that part of the business, and I joined this entity that was trying to solve a failure with one of their heart valve divisions called Shiley. And once we solved that problem, I was debating whether I should stay at Pfizer, but then me and a friend of mine, we decided to start our own company. I moved back up north again, started a company by the name of EndoTex. We were the first venture-backed company that designed a carotid stent for prevention of stroke. And that company eventually got sold to Boston Scientific. I then got recruited and kind of moved away from cardiovascular and went into dentistry and worked for Invisalign. I was their first VP of R&D there. And then the company went through a tremendous growth. After a year and a half, the company went public. I stayed on as an officer and EVP of R&D for 4 years. And then I decided to leave mainly because Align was a one-product company, and it didn't seem like they were going to get into other products. And since then, I started 3 companies. 2 of them were in the ENT area. One of them was Sonitus Medical, which unfortunately didn't make it. We went into commercialization, but we couldn't get reimbursement for it. The second one was Tusker Medical, which was a tympanostomy tube. We bought that technology from J&J. The core technology was developed as part of our Acclarent acquisition. And then we got that project through a PMA approval, and then Smith and Nephew bought that project. And the third company, my last company, was uLab System, which was an AI software for orthodontic treatment planning, and that company is commercial right now. And I left the company 2 years ago, and right now I sit on 6 boards, 2 in urology, 1 in cardiology, 1 in dental implant, and 1 in drug delivery, and another 1 in orthodontics.
Okay. Well, that keeps you busy.
Yeah. No, I'm having fun. It gives me, I guess, the freedom to be in different space, work with different entrepreneurs. it's really fun. It's very different than what I'm used to before.
Yeah. Well, if you were able to spend back time and talk to a 22-year-old Amir and give him some advice, I guess first off, do you think you would listen to the advice at 22, or But what would you give? What advice would you give yourself?
Well, I like to think that I'm a good listener, so
Sure.
hopefully I would. But you learn from your own mistakes. I mean, that's the only way you learn. I mean, you have to make mistakes to learn. And so I would say a couple of things. I think when I was young and starting my career, especially in the startup phase, I always thought that the technology is all the value. I mean, especially since I'm an engineer and I'm a technologist. And it took me a while to realize that it's really the people that come around the technology that is the real value. And that's really a core understanding, because I see that among young entrepreneurs, that they come in, they're so passionate about their technology, and they miss that point. And it's very hard to kind of say, yeah, the technology is important, but who's helping you build it? And they just look at you. I said, no, but I just came up with this invention. It's going to change the world. Yes, but who's going to help you build it? And that piece is so important, so critical. And so I would say that's one thing. The other thing is, with my first company, I recall like going to the meeting, and part of it was just being nervous, because you're not used to that environment, and you fire up your computer and you just want to go through the slides. And
Sure.
If you look at it from the other side, that's the last thing they want to do. I mean, they listen to PowerPoint slides all day. And for you to sell a vision, you need to emotionally connect by telling a story that is compelling. And from my point of view, the best advice I could give is, before you fire up any slide, try to have a conversation for the first 10, 15 minutes. And even if you have a half an hour meeting, that's actually the most important part. Get to know the other side, let them know you, and more importantly, tell them why you're doing what you're doing before you go over any slide. And sometimes you realize you don't even need to go over your slides. You could just have a conversation, share your vision. And then if time runs out, if the other side likes your idea, they're going to schedule another meeting and you go for a longer time period. But just make sure that you make that connection before rushing through any slide deck that you preferred for that meeting.
Yeah, great advice. So if you were to go back to that first leadership position, which company was it that you were actually leading a team?
Sonitus was the first company that I was the CEO. So
Okay.
That was kind of like my first experience kind of doing it on my own. But I had great leaders that I worked for, Fred Khosravi at EndoTex, and then Tom Prescott at Invisalign. And, I watched very closely how they build out those organizations. And they were great mentors along the way.
Yeah. That was one of my questions around mentors. It sounds like you were purposeful as far as in having people in your life that could help you as far as develop and to get further than you could on your own, for sure. So
Absolutely. It's a never-ending process. I mean, I'm still learning. Because I'm still making mistakes.
Yeah, and I love it when leaders say that they're still learning, because that is a sign of a great leader.
But hopefully I'm not making the same mistake twice, and I'm not making bad mistakes that are
right.
really costly. So I have wised up to some degree, but yeah, that's the nature of business. It's very dynamic, and you're bound to make some mistakes along the way.
Well, you mentioned early in our conversation around the importance of people, putting the right team in place. What are some things that you wish you would have known early on, as far as you hired new people for your team? What are some things that now you think about when you're looking at a team?
So one of the best advice, and I would tell you who gave it to me. I always remember this. It was Dana Medak Kleiner, and he was on my board initially at Sonitus Medical. And at the time when he gave me this advice, it didn't really click. I mean, it was kind of puzzling. And he told me, Amir, now that you got your funding, hire the best team possible based on the expertise you need to take you from this point to your next round. And don't worry about the next round. And, at that time, I just go, well, that's only 2 years. I mean, I don't want to hire a senior management just for 2 years. But in reality, that is I think that is a very practical advice, and it's a really great advice, because the group you hire, let's say for your Series A, might not be the right group, or at least some of those leaders might not be the right leaders or the expertise you need for the B round, Yep. And that doesn't mean you're being cutthroat. I mean, you could treat people fairly and just be upfront with them that, hey, we need this set of skills and you don't have it, or you could put people in a different position. There are many ways you could manage it. But in a startup mode, you got to think that way. And again, it didn't come natural to me, but that advice turned out to be true throughout my career for every startups I've been involved with.
I like the idea that you mentioned that there's a different skill set needed as far as each stage of growth.
Right.
Sometimes leaders don't do well as far as again, as they grow the firm or the organization, they sometimes don't have the skill set needed to get it to the next level. What are some things that you did as a leader to continue to grow with your organization? It sounds like your mentors were a part of that. Anything else that you did purposely to grow?
Yeah. So in my first 2 companies, I had an executive coach. I mean, so either initially I brought him as a consultant, and then eventually I put him on the board. So they were actually helping me as a executive board, where they had a fiduciary duty as a board member, but outside of the board, they were my confidant. And especially in a situation where you're the only founder, it gets very lonely. And sometimes you want to break the good or the bad news to someone that you trust, and obviously they're involved with the company and they know all the activities before you either relay it to the rest of the board or to the rest of the company or the public. And I think that was super valuable for me.
So you're sitting on 6 boards currently.
Right.
Go back to the time where you first started working with a board. What are some things that you've learned over the years as a board member, as well as reporting to a board, or talk a little bit about that?
Well, that's an area I would say, Mark, I'm still learning. I mean, because it's just being a board member is a new. I mean, I've been on the boards before. I've always, since I've been involved with a startup, I had maybe 1 or 2 board affiliation, but this is all I do right now. I mean, I'm on 6 boards, so I'm learning a lot, and I'm watching a lot of different investors, how they behave in different boards. And I would say the board members that are challenging and asking a lot of questions are typically the best board members, because they push the process. And it's often uncomfortable for a CEO or an entrepreneur to have those kind of board members, because they give you a lot of homework, and you don't want homework when you're working 12, 16 hours a day, right? 7 days a week. But if you don't have those board members, the process doesn't get challenged, And that's a miss. And so you have to pick your board carefully. Sometimes you don't have that option because, especially in today's market, with the capital market, you try to get the money from where you can and you get the board member, but in
Sure.
cases where you could choose your board members, I would pick the one that, again, through friends or network, that really challenge the process. And I've seen make it a huge difference in different companies.
So
Because every board meeting you go in and everything you thought that, at least in your mind, you had it figured out, they poke holes in it. And that's a good thing for the company. That's not a bad thing.
Yeah. So what are you excited about in your field? Where do you see, everybody's talking about AI and how it's going to impact. What are some things that you see and you're excited about as far as with the technology that's around the corner?
I think a lot of the technologies beside AI, are going toward automation. I think robots are, to me, very exciting. Almost in every company I'm in, because there's excitement about AI and robots, we're all thinking now out of the box. Okay, can I automate this with a robot? Can I put AI on it? So instead of the procedure takes 35 minutes, we could bring it down to 10 minutes, or at least offload the physician from doing the majority of the work. The physician could do the treatment planning, and then they press a button and they're just monitoring, and maybe they could do 2 or 3 of these operations simultaneously or very close to each other, because that I guess the activities that usually the doctors do with hand, now it's done by a robot, and you're just using their brains to just make sure it's done the way they wanted to do it, and they just do the final QC. So those areas are very interesting to me and very exciting to me.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're continuing to learn and develop. Any books that you would put on a leader's reading list?
So it's not your typical book that someone would recommend for leaders to read. I do daily meditation, and this is something I've been doing for now several years. And about, I would say 5 months ago, I was in a coffee shop and I was talking to a lady in front of me that turned out to be a therapist. And she was reading this book by Dr. Joe Dispenza. It's by the title Becoming Supernatural. And I got very interested. It was in her hand, and I said, "What is that book?" He goes, "Well, if you do meditation," and she didn't know I was doing meditation. He goes, "He really explains what happens to you from a biochemistry point of view." And we started talking, and I got interested. I bought the book and I read it twice within a period of 2 weeks. And then I bought it for my daughters and my brothers. I said, "You got to read this book." And the book is not really about meditation or specifically about meditation, but what it is all about is using meditation and visualization to influence your gene expression and essentially connect to quantum field. I know this sounds kind of very sci-fi, but he does a phenomenal job of explaining what happens and how you could make your dreams come true. And just by being grateful about your life, being loving toward other people, and then putting your energy on thoughts that you want to bring to realization. And I think his process works. And I recommend that book to anybody because it just makes you a better person to lead your life. And if you could lead your life, you could lead your company or anything.
So favorite quotes that you refer to or that you told others?
All right, favorite quote. So, 2 comes to mind. So one of them is actually from my brother. I don't know where he got it from. But I mentioned that the first company I started was Sonitus, and unfortunately that company didn't make it. And the day that we had to shut down the company, my brother called me and he said, "Amir, I know you don't want to hear this, but I just want to let you know life is your friend. And even though you are in this dark moment and you don't realize it, one day you're going to realize this is the best thing that happened to you. All right. And then when I reflect back, I mean, I don't think having a failed company under my belt was the best thing that happened to me, but the events that came after that point, they were truly a wonderful events. I mean, I ended up working for one of my investors, and I didn't mention that in my background. So for a year and a half, I worked for Apple Tree Partners in New York on the venture side, and that was truly a great experience for me, and that kind of led to me leading Tusker because we made that investment, and I decided to kind of leave the firm and become the CEO of Tusker. So it opened new doors for me. And my favorite quotes is by this guru from India called Sadhguru, says, human beings are not suffering life, they're suffering from memory and imagination. And that is so true. Like when I look back all the dark spots in my life, the reason they're dark, or I consider them to be dark, it was because I was just imagining something in my head and it didn't happen and everything became dark. Whereas reality, everything was good. I was healthy. Family was great. There was food on the table. There was a roof above our head.
Sure.
And I was just lost in my memory and imagination. And if you could get yourself out of that mood, life is great.
Yeah.
Life is your friend.
Yeah, most of the executives I talk to have said when they've ever had something that was a setback, they said they learned more during that setback than they ever did in their successes. And I think that's a great reminder that if you're having a bad day, it's a learning opportunity, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Not fun, but a learning opportunity. Outside of work, it sounds like you recharge. What are some activities that you enjoy?
I have a lot of hobbies, Mark. I mean, I hike at least once or twice a week. I have chickens. I attend to my chickens. I'm a beekeeper. I already said I meditate. I do read. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I used to go mountain biking, but I haven't done it for a year and a half now. But I do yoga 3-4 times a week. I like that just for flexibility and just also another way of meditating. And my wife and I, we are avid travelers, so we go on 2 or 3 trips a year at least. And then I like movies too.
Favorite movie?
So I just recently, I wouldn't say it's a favorite, but it's one of my favorites in the recent month, House of Dynamite. I just watched it on Netflix and I couldn't sleep. It was a great movie.
Okay. What parting advice would you give a new leader?
Well, I mean, I love our field. I really like our industry, medtech. It has been very good to me, but as you know, it has becoming more and more challenging with the cost of just getting a product through the approval, raising the capital, and it's becoming more and more feeling like a labor of love. But one of the things I cannot stress to an entrepreneur that coming to this field, you need to figure out upfront who's going to use the product and who's going to pay for it. That is so critical right now. Fortunately for me, when I started my career, we didn't have to do all of that. I mean, if we had a great idea, all we needed to show is what is the unmet need and how we're going to solve it, and how big is the potential market. And then at that point, somebody would give you a check, and then you worry about how it gets paid and how you're going to do the regulatory and reimbursement in the next round. But 10 years ago or 15 years ago, you had to figure out kind of the reimbursement pathway and also the regulatory pathway more clearly. But today, you also need to really figure out who's going to pay for it, how is it going to what is the business model? And so that's my advice. I mean, don't go into a meeting without knowing at least a framework for how it's going to get paid and what is your business model.
Right. Well, Amir, I appreciate again your thoughts and your wisdom, and definitely have enjoyed hearing your story, and wish you continued success in all you're doing, and appreciate you joining us on our podcast this week.
All right, thank you, Mark, for having me. It's been fun, and again, it's been a pleasure to participate in this podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Motivated to Lead podcast. Please subscribe on iTunes. You can also see a video version of this interview at motivatedtolead.com. This podcast is brought to you by SEMA Partners, helping you find your next great leader.